Hello, dear friends. Fear nothing, because within you is a source of infinite power and wisdom that will guide you through any obstacle. It is ready to be tapped at any time. Use it. Fear doesn't stop death, it stops life. And worry doesn't take away tomorrow's problems. It takes away the peace of today. By being afraid of death, you forgot to live. If you only realized how powerful you are. Opinion piece. Strange weather. Cold snap in Europe. Life is hard for everyone now. Business as usual no longer works. Cryptocurrencies crash in India. Supply crisis is here to stay. Peeling the economic onion would bring tears. Strange winds blow through parts of the earth. Snowstorm would shut down the financial system. They would have a deadline before the end of November. Turkey crisis leads to anti-government protests. French contactee confirms they are seeding human wealth. Can a second internet be built for free speech? Myanmar seizes banks' accounts of George Soros' organization. Egypt revives Luxor's splendor with a show of pharaonic evocation. Let's start. Strange winds blow through parts of the earth. Record snowfall from sea effect in Japan. Largest dust storm ever recorded in Uzbekistan. India paralyzed with dust in and around New Delhi. There are weather anomalies all over the world. Polar vortices and Earth's loop flow change in global growth zones. Climate anomaly would be a deviation of the value of a weather element from what is normal value. To determine climate anomalies, the difference between a climatic event at a particular location and the average value of that element over the Earth's parallel at that location is analyzed. Energy prices soar in Germany as Arctic blast brings significant snow. The first cold snap of the heating season in Europe has arrived, driving up energy prices as sub-zero temperatures lead to higher energy demand for heating building structures in the Midwest. The daily energy price in Germany rose to the second highest level in history, 273.89 per megawatt hour. The daily energy price is also higher in France and the Netherlands. The German Weather Service on Tuesday issued a note warning of frigid and snowy weather. A severe snowstorm would shut down the financial system. They want to shut down the internet and access to our bank account, but they would need to do it in a disguised way. Therefore, they would blame the shutdown of all banks on once-in-a-lifetime weather event, such as a snowstorm or rainstorm, that would bring down the internet network. A powerful 6.1 magnitude earthquake shakes the India-Myanmar border region. The quake originated at a depth of 32.8 kilometers, and its epicenter was located 19 kilometers northwest of the town of Hakka in Myanmar. The Myanmar army has seized the bank accounts of George Soros' organization and announces arrest warrants. Deadline. They have a deadline that they have to meet before the end of November. So we are in a 6-day window. It could be anytime, according to Max Sider. Mass arrests have been underway since at least June 2021, when forces around the world began arresting the upper echelons. The date for immediate takeover has not yet to be determined, and 10 plus 3 days of darkness, and it would all depend on world events. I don't believe in a blackout, but in intermittences. Freedom and Finance. Here is what will spook the markets by John Rubino. The Federal Reserve would have no choice but to keep inflating. Jerome Powell's renomination as Fed chairman would mean nothing, says financial author John Rubino, nor would the recent pullback in precious metals make sense because all the bullish fundamentals for gold and silver remain in place. Fed to taper its bond buying. The Federal Reserve would likely double the pace of tapering its monthly bond purchases, starting in January to $30 billion, and taper its bond buying plan in mid-March. ECB faces pressure to unlock bonds to avoid market contraction. The European Central Bank is under pressure from bankers to lend more German government bonds to avoid market contraction that would undo some of its stimulus efforts. Cuts in crisis. Visa and MasterCard accumulate significant stock market falls as problems continue to multiply over the last month. All this has at a historic moment for the sector, as it faces a change of cycle with the entry of a generation that no longer uses credit cards. Cryptocurrencies crash in India. Cryptocurrency prices have plummeted in India since a proposed government bill seeking to ban private virtual currencies sent holders into panic selling mode. Turkey's currency crisis leads to anti-government protests. Protesters took the streets of Ankara and Istanbul, demanding the resignation of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his cabinet due to the country's rising inflation. Reflections. The same old no longer works. What used to work in the markets for years is being strongly challenged these days. Investment timescales seem to have undergone a real shift. By the time you are thinking about sowing the seeds of a new trade, the smart money has already begun to reap the harvest. Peeling the economic onion would bring tears. Add rising national debt, rising trade deficit, rising inequality, underfunded pensions, and a few other nasty problems, and tears should stream down the faces of all those who want to leave the world in a better situation for future generations. A new world is emerging according to the nomad economist. As the world teeters on the brink of financial disaster, leaders are calling for a new world order. As early as the late 1990s, David Rockefeller, author of the idea of private power replacing governments, said the world was on the threshold of a global change and invoked the need for some large-scale crisis that would make people accept the new world order, in quotes. Can a second internet be built for free speech? Christopher Bedford, head of communications at Rightforge, is currently engaged in a battle to build a second internet, an extremely difficult and costly endeavor. But for free speech advocates, it may be necessary, especially after the social networking platform Parler was taken down for ostensibly political reasons. Life is very difficult for everyone now. The emotional roller coaster has become our way of life as we try to cope with each new challenge that comes our way. Unity consciousness and love are growing exponentially because of these shared difficulties. The Great Awakening is like a little bird peeking and coming out of its shell. It's not easy, but it is happening steadily, and we will all fly free soon. Finally, always remember how very powerful we are. A worldwide network of light warriors growing exponentially every day. Supply crisis. The supply crisis has thrown world trade into chaos. The ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach in California have become a clear example of what is happening to supply chains. The global supply crisis is here to stay. The global supply chain is broken. Experts point to a perfect storm of problems that have combined to break a system that used to run relatively smoothly. The crisis has affected trade around the world, causing product shortages and driving up prices. Ongoing disruptions are affecting global growth. This is not just a supply chain shortage, writes the Atlantis report. Supply chain problems are only getting worse. It could be a tough winter for a lot of people. Higher prices at the gas pump. Stores are charging twice as much for things. Ports are currently clogged with ships waiting to be unloaded. At the end of September, there were an average of 60 vessels and as many as 73 anchored outside the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. So the problem peaked this month. Vessels are unable to get past the unloading bottleneck at the ports. This has to do with a huge increase in demand, no workers on the docks and no power in China. There is a shortage of truck drivers at the ports to have goods removed while waiting for ships to arrive at the port and unload them. There are no dock workers thanks to cheap pay. More and more ships are packed waiting to unload. There is a shortage of cranes to unload the ships. There is a lack of controllers for transport to distribution centers. Ports are full of goods waiting for trucks. Long-term truckers are not investing in new trucks because California has a law that will ban them in 2035. They want them to buy electric trucks that don't exist yet. 25% of truck drivers have stopped driving because the new $15 an hour minimum wage they can earn elsewhere. Ascension. What will fifth density be like? May-channeled entities have told us that ascension is not necessarily a thing or an event. In the universal law teachings, Sanat Kumara talked about it being a series of events that are exactly tailored to the individual. In quotes, not everyone is having a simultaneous experience, so it's not happening at the same speed for everyone. And it also depends on how deeply you are holding that truth and that vision of who you are. The event, as you call it, is still a series of events because not everyone is working in the same moment in the now. Yes, there is only one moment, but within that moment there is eternity and infinity. Think of it more as a portal, as an activation, or as a series of events. Close quotes. War zone. Here we sit in this 4D world of fear-based war zone, when the ticket to that future has to be based on the open source, a new humanity based on a shared common ground. What is the real future in 5D rather than the 4D based on the ego of wealth accumulation? As you can imagine, this planet evolves as a collection of sentient souls that work better together in harmony through natural attributes such as telepathy. Such a method trumps the talking heads that harbor a financial agenda of humankind, which is the old show that we are now transitioning from very soon as we evolve. Transition. The Greatest Transition by Judith Castle. The greatest transition from solid form to light form is actually a transition from the dense physical world of the old 3D to the higher light body form of the 5D and above. The higher your frequency, the less dense your body becomes, and the less you become attached to the physical form. Now everything is coming together in a miraculous way. I understand more and more what is meant in the Bible when Yeshua said that it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for certain souls to pass through the portals of ascension, mainly because most of those living on planet Earth are afraid to delve deep within themselves in search of answers, healing and indeed dissolving the patterns of pain and suffering accumulated over many lifetimes. All roads lead inward from the kingdom of heaven is indeed within you. It is not outside you. As you ascend, you step more and more into the truth of who and what you truly are. And in fact, you allow the wounds to open, the cat to come out, so that you can finally be freed from those patterns of suffering and pain, and in fact, free others as well. The freer you become, the more you will grow in universal Christ consciousness, and in embracing the fullness of the divine that lives within you, of your own soul, as one with the divine and with all that is. So, in fact, transfiguration means resurrection, and a complete death of the old, and then metamorphosis into the body of light, and into mastery and illumination from deep within. Other worlds. French contactee confirms they are seeding human worlds. Robert L. is a contactee from France who says that in 1969 he spent almost a year at a secret base in the Himalayas where he participated in a genetic experiment to seed human life on a planet in another galaxy. After completing this year-long stay at the base, Robert was returned to France and told to remain silent, which he did for nearly 40 years until 2005 when he first went public. He contacted a well-known French UFO researcher, George Soros, who was so impressed that he included Robert's case in a 2011 book, UFOs in France, The Investigations of George Soros. What makes Robert's story especially important today is that in this book he described it as belonging to an intergalactic confederation that would manage life on planets like Earth, and that this organization would work under the supervision of a mysterious group of 9 highly advanced beings, the famous Council of 9. Super Soldier talked with Agent Jimmy Payne. On Mars, he saw the broken statue of a giant humanoid face on a mission in 1974, along with Duncan O'Finoyan. He remembers seeing Tommy Knockers in a cave of Mars, who are the muscular type of tall greys. On the moon of Titan, he was stationed in a huge subway base. He was tasked with fighting a monster they called IT. It resembled the Montauk monster, a type of Bigfoot monster that would gain strength for attacking him. He was also a secret Vanguard Air Force mission, the Apollo 20 lunar mission, with William Rutledge, where they discovered an oriental-looking humanoid named E.B. Mona Lisa. Jimmy claims that the Apollo 20 footage on YouTube is real. Egypt revives the splendor of Luxor with a show of pharaonic evocation. Egypt celebrated Thursday a show of pharaonic style with a procession along the ancient avenue of the Sphinxes, a corridor between the temple of Luxor and the religious complex of Karnak, with which he wanted to revive the splendor that keeps the monumental city, the ancient imperial capital of Thebes. As in the so-called Golden Parade last April in Cairo, the government organized an event with lights, music, dance, and the parade recreating a procession held in the Theban capital, located on the banks of the Nile in the center of the country, with hundreds of extras dressed as in the pharaonic era. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.